Today I'd really just love to share with you how the Lord has changed my life. I was lucky enough to be raised in church at a very young age. I remember an altar call in kindergarten and going up and understanding what that meant and asking the Lord into my heart. And so, I'm blessed in that way, but it's not to say that throughout my life I've had things happen that have made me question who God is and if He's good and if He's real. Even though, I was raised in a Christian home, I had some trials that I had to walk through. One was sexual abuse as a young girl, really from kindergarten through third grade, and it was by my grandfather. So that was really hard, and that was really tough, and I didn't have the courage to tell my parents what had happened until I was in 5th grade. And the family just dealt with it in the only way they knew how. They ended up confronting him, but then afterwards, it was like we just moved on, and I was left to just be around him and act like nothing had happened, and it was just a lot to process. And I went through my elementary years and junior high just kind of, confused a lot and hurting. And when I got to high school, the Lord, really had me start dealing with all those feelings and the effects of what had happened. I needed to do a lot of forgiving. I needed a lot of emotional healing. But I first really needed to realize that God was a God that would heal and that He would pick up those broken pieces, and that He could be personal and real to me in that way. And He did. He absolutely did. And then when I went into college, that, continued in even a deeper way. My walk with God grew tremendously in college. I was called into ministry in that time and really felt like, I was really walking closely with Him, and I had, been through the fire, and I had came out on the other side. But little did I know that, my journey wasn't over. I was 24, and my mom was my best friend. And in August, I went to pick her up, and she loved being in our backyard pool. And I went to pick her up for lunch, and she had drowned. And I can remember every detail of that day. It was the worst day of my life. And I can remember praying out loud as the ambulance came and they were trying to revive her, and just crying out to God. I didn't care who was around. But then in the end, she passed away. And that did something to me that I had never experienced in life. The things that I walked through in the past was a lot of hurt from other people and what they had done. And, I'd been able to wrap my head around, God doesn't make us robots, and He can't control always what other people do to us and in this life, and sin has entered the world. And, I had wrapped my head around that and understood those things. But in this moment, facing this, it felt a lot harder because I didn't understand. There was nobody to point a finger at, but the Lord. And why did You do this? And why did You take her? Why is so tragically, so senseless, so unexpected and hurtful? Why did I have to see her like this? All these things. And why did You take her when my life just finally was starting, it felt like. So I had a lot of anger towards the Lord that I had never experienced before. It was almost like I felt like he had betrayed me. Like I thought we were close. I thought we were, um, you know. So I definitely had a long journey ahead of me there. It took years really to walk through that confusion and that anger and that frustration and that hurt, and to find a way to accept that God was good in spite of those things, and that he loved me, and that he was walking with me through it, and that we don't always understand the whys of things that happen, but we understand who he is when they do, and that never changes. And there was, in that time of my life, I walked through some miscarriages. I walked through hard things with the family, and just a lot of rejection and so many things. And I just remember it being such a dark time in my life. And I knew, because I was raised in church and because of the experience I'd had with the Lord before, I knew in my head that God was the answer and that God was good, but my heart was having a hard time catching up. And it just felt so dark, but I'm telling you, in those years were some of the most life-changing years of my life. I just remember so many special moments where, I would go to church, drag myself there, because that's what it felt like, be crying just tears the whole service, and, someone would come up to me and just say the exact thing that I needed to hear. Or, just a song would come on at a moment that I was having a hard time. Just timely things happen like that a lot in those dark years, and I felt like the Lord was just showing me his love, and that he was going to continue to chase after me, and to let me know that he's not letting me go. And that was so special to me. And even though I had these feelings with him, it was like he knew and he understood, and it was okay that I had these questions, but that he was just not, he wasn't going to turn his back on me. And that was something that I needed. And I was able to come out of that time, and it's really truly a miracle that God did such a healing and took me out of such a bad place, and he's brought me to where I'm at today. And the fact that I can even talk to you about these things is amazing. I mean, I used to be hyperventilate when I would talk about, my past and have anxiety, and now I'm able to minister to others that have walked through these things and give them hope and walk through it with them. So the Lord has been very real in my life, very present through trials, and he has shown that he is the God that I accepted when I was a young girl with that innocent faith. He's the same God in that he is good and that he is real. And so I hope that encourages you today.